You're watching Northern Crimes.
Canada. It's a land defined by contrasts. In the west, sweeping wilderness meets urban life, and in the plains and to the east, remote landscapes stretch beyond the modern cities. In these quiet forests and along the edges of small towns, mysteries endure, concealed by the isolation of the land itself. And even within Canada's bustling cities, shadows of the unknown persist, marking stories of lives lost or disrupted in ways that defy explanation. This is the true story of 5 unsolved cold cases from Canada. Welcome to Northern Crimes. In the rugged wilderness of northern Saskatchewan, 2 Indigenous leaders vanished in the summer of 1967. James Brady and Abbie Halkett were experienced outdoorsmen, setting off on what seemed to be a typical uranium prospecting trip. But when they disappeared, what began as a search for 2 missing men turned into one of Canada's most puzzling cold cases. James Jim Brady was a prominent Métis activist and a dedicated advocate for Indigenous self-governance. Known for his sharp intellect and unyielding principles, Brady's shelves were lined with books ranging from the Bible to the Communist Manifesto. His activism wasn't limited to words. In fact, in 1932, he co-founded the Association of the Métis of Alberta and the Northwest Territories. His influence reached far beyond his community, making him a respected and sometimes divisive figure. On the other hand, Abbie Halkett was a band counselor of the Lac La Ronge Indian Band, admired for his empathy and steady leadership. His close ties to his community and his quiet strength earned him the trust of those around him. Together, Brady and Halkett symbolized both resilience and commitment to their people, fighting for a future where Indigenous communities could thrive. On June 7, 1967, Brady and Halkett set out for their prospecting expedition. A small bush plane dropped them near Lower Foster Lake, though there were later concerns they may have been dropped at the wrong location. They set up camp by the lakeside, equipped with their gear, a canoe, and prospecting tools. Their arrival was confirmed via radio, and all appeared normal. But 9 days later, Barry Richards, who had coordinated the expedition, returned with more supplies. To his shock, the camp was deserted, the only sign of life being an undisturbed canoe tied to a birch tree. There were no footprints, personal items, or clues left behind, just an empty campsite, leaving behind an unsettling silence. The RCMP initiated a search, but investigators were quick to consider the disappearance a likely accident, citing the remote terrain and possible dangers. Yet those who knew Brady and Halkett challenged this theory. Both men were seasoned in navigating the wild, and they wouldn't have become lost so easily. Local trackers who examined the site noted unusual details: a disturbed patch of moss, a mark indicating a boat had docked, and questioned why the canoe was tied to a birch tree, a tree known for its weak roots. Over time, family members, including Indigenous Studies professor Dr. Deanna Rader, took up the search. Using sonar technology, Rader located a quote anomaly on the lakebed, sparking hope that remains might be found. But even today, there has been no definitive confirmation leaving the case shrouded in mystery. Theories about the men's disappearances are varied. Some speculate that Brady's outspoken political beliefs and activism made him a target, suspecting political adversaries might have sought to silence him. Others believe that a potential uranium discovery may have sparked a fatal betrayal, as rival prospectors could have coveted that find. There's even a more unconventional theory, suggesting UFO involvement. However, this theory is more often raised to highlight the lack of plausible explanations than an actual genuine belief in UFO activity. The mystery of James Brady and Abbie Halkett's disappearance endures, leaving their families and communities with a sense of unresolved loss. For Indigenous communities in northern Saskatchewan, the case is more than a cold case. It's a story that symbolizes both resilience and the painful absence of justice. So as time passes, the search for answers continues, but for now, their fate remains unknown. In a quiet town in Alberta, a chilling discovery on a rural farm would haunt the local community and baffle investigators for decades. In April 1977, the remains of an unknown man were found submerged in a septic tank. Known only as Septic Tank Sam, his story remained a mystery for over 40 years until advances in forensic technology finally revealed his identity. Gordon "Gordy" Sanderson was a man whose life reflected the hardship faced by many Indigenous children during the 60s scoop. Born in Manitoba in 1950, Gordy was separated from his family at a young age and placed in foster care. Like many Indigenous children from the time, this marked him deeply. As an adult, he moved to Edmonton seeking a fresh start, but continued to struggle with addiction and brushes with the law. Gordy kept in touch with his family, and when he mentioned plans to visit his brother in Calgary, they expected to see him soon, but he never arrived. Years later, Gordy's body would be found under horrific circumstances, left on a farm near Tofield, Alberta. His sister, Joyce Sanderson's DNA, would ultimately identify him, restoring his name and offering his family a small measure of closure after decades of uncertainty. The horror of Gordy's murder was uncovered on April 13, 1977, when a couple, inspecting their septic tank, stumbled upon his remains. Investigators revealed that Gordy had been tortured, burned with a blowtorch, assaulted and shot multiple times before being wrapped in a yellow bedsheet bound with nylon rope and dumped in the tank. The body had been covered in quicklime, most likely in a mistaken attempt to hasten decomposition. The level of brutality suggested that Gordy likely knew his killers and that the murder was motivated by intense animosity. Local authorities were quick to mobilize, but the investigation faced immediate challenges. With no ID and few forensic resources available, police could only guess at Gordy's identity. Initial theories suggested he might be a transient or a migrant worker, a man whose life had brought him to Alberta from afar. His body was ultimately buried as a John Doe, and as years passed, the case went cold. Gordy's body was exhumed twice in attempts to gather more information, once in 1979 and again in 2000, but no leads materialized. In fact, it wasn't until 2021 when Alberta RCMP enlisted the help of Othram Incorporated, a Texas-based lab specializing in forensic genetic genealogy, that a breakthrough occurred. Othram used advanced DNA analysis to create a genetic profile, eventually linking it to Gordy's sister Joyce. After 44 years, Gordy's identity was confirmed. The details of Gordy's murder suggest that his killers were people he knew, likely tied to the criminal activity that surrounded his life in Edmonton. Some believe Gordy's lifestyle and associations exposed him to dangerous people with violent tendencies. The intensity of his injuries and the methodical disposal of his body indicate a deeply personal motive, likely involving someone who harbored resentment or felt wronged by him. Despite these theories, no suspects have been identified, and authorities continue to appeal for information. Many of Gordy's associates, and possibly his killer, may no longer be alive, but the RCMP remains committed to closing this case. The story of Gordon Sanderson is a reminder of a tragic era and the personal devastation caused by the 60s scoop. Known for decades only as Septic Tank Sam, Gordy was finally given his name back, restoring his place within his family's history. While his identity has been revealed, justice remains elusive. The RCMP, they hold out hope that with the public's help, they may one day find those responsible, bringing a measure of justice to Gordy's story. In the late summer of 1988, Vancouver's East Side, a neighborhood marked by hardship and resilience, saw the tragic deaths of two young women. Lisa Gavin and Glenna Dusty Sowan were close friends who faced the challenges of addiction and poverty together. But within 6 weeks, both would be dead, their stories intertwined by loss and a killer who was never found. Lisa Gavin and Glenna Sowan shared a bond that transcended the daily struggles they faced. Lisa, just 21, was known for her warmth and vibrancy. At 5 feet 2 inches tall, with brown hair tipped with bleach, she was a memorable presence to those who knew her. Despite the challenges of addiction, she remained close with her foster family, especially her sister, Sharon Turling, who recalls her kindness and resilience. For Lisa, life on the streets, it was a hard reality, but she faced it with strength and friendship. Glenna, known to her friends as Dusty, was 25 years old, small and slender, with a spirit that belied her struggles. Like Lisa, she'd faced a long battle with addiction, leaning on the support of her friend to navigate the harsh realities of life in Vancouver. Friends also noted Glenna's grief following Lisa's death, a sorrow that seemed to weigh heavier with each passing day. Just weeks later, she too would become a victim, leaving behind a family and community who remember her for her kindness. On August 12, 1988, Lisa Gavin was last seen by her foster sister Sharon around 11 p.m. on Main in Hastings. Minutes later, she disappeared. Witnesses recall seeing her around midnight as she left a friend's apartment on East Broadway, planning to work briefly before returning, but Lisa never made it back. The following morning, her partially clothed body was discovered in a lane near Knight Street and East 49th Avenue, a scene that was stark and haunting. 6 weeks after Lisa's death, Glenna was last seen by her boyfriend near East 6th Avenue and St. George Street. The next day, her body was found concealed in a thicket near West 24th Avenue and Willow Street. She'd suffered blunt force trauma and bore ligature marks, a grim parallel to Lisa's murder. The brutality of both crimes suggested a connection that was disturbingly clear to those in the community. The Vancouver Police Department took on the investigation, but the leads were scarce. Detectives reviewed every detail and re-examined evidence over the years, yet the identity of the killer remains unknown. In 2014, the cases were added to the VPD's Cold Cases website in a renewed appeal for information, though no substantial tips surfaced. Detectives remain hopeful, believing someone holds the answers to what happened to Lisa and Glenna. However, in recent years, police have linked the murders to an unidentified serial killer suspected in 6 similar homicides. This killer, who died in 2009, was never charged, leaving questions that remain unanswered. Advances in forensic technology offer hope, and with time, there's a possibility that new evidence could finally bring the truth to light. Speculation surrounding Lisa and Glenna's murders has intensified over the years. A recent podcast, Cold Case Canada, highlights a theory that an unknown man may have been responsible for both deaths. Police suspect this man killed 6 women in the Vancouver area between 1988 and 1990. Though his death in 2009 ended any chance of justice, the families are left with lingering questions. The police, however, have refrained from releasing his name, citing the open status of the investigation, a silence that leaves families hoping for clarity and closure. The murders of Lisa Gavin and Glenna Sowan still haunt Vancouver's east side. These 2 young women, who supported each other through life's challenges, met a tragic end that remains unsolved. Their families and friends keep their memories alive, waiting for the day when answers emerge. Until then, the case of Lisa and Glenna endures as a reminder of the justice still sought by those who love them. In the quiet town of New Liskeard, Ontario, a lasting mystery has haunted its streets for nearly 3 decades. On the night of September 28, 1996, 15-year-old Melanie Ethier set out on a short walk home, a path she'd taken many times before, but she never arrived. As the years have passed, Melanie's case remains unsolved, with few clues and countless questions. What happened to this young girl on that fateful night? Melanie Ethier was an ambitious, compassionate teenager, known for her kindness and maturity. An honors student, Melanie had a deep sense of responsibility, working part-time at a local daycare and often helping care for her younger sister. She already had big dreams of becoming a teacher and volunteering in Botswana, her father's home country. To her mother, Celine, Melanie was thoughtful and warm, a steady presence who brought a sense of purpose to those around her. Her disappearance would shatter her family, leaving them in a void of unanswered questions and enduring pain. On September 28, 1996, Melanie spent her Saturday night with friends in New Liskeard. The group had rented the movie Sudden Death and spent the evening watching it and hanging out around town. By just after 2 a.m., Melanie decided to walk home, setting off on a walk that should have taken only 15 minutes. She was last seen wearing a green Nike jacket, a white t-shirt with a Pepe logo, and black boots. Melanie left her friends and began the familiar route down Pine Avenue, crossed over the Armstrong Street Bridge, and disappeared into the night. The bridge marked her last known location, a point along her well-traveled path where all trace of her seemed to vanish. By morning, her absence became clear, and as the hours passed without a sign of her, concern turned into alarm. The Ontario Provincial Police, or OPP, began an extensive investigation as soon as Melanie was reported missing. Officers began a search around her last known location, meticulously covering the Armstrong Street Bridge and the areas along the Wabi River. Helicopters, search dogs, and dive teams joined in the effort. Police questioned residents and went door to door, but no sign of Melanie surfaced. The OPP even consulted psychics in hopes of uncovering new leads, yet every inquiry yielded nothing new. Throughout the years, Melanie's case has drawn in over 700 tips, but few have led anywhere conclusive. Witnesses reported a suspicious vehicle, a light-colored car, possibly a Chevrolet Monte Carlo or Ford Tempo, seen slowly moving along the bridge that night with its headlights off. This detail remains one of the few haunting leads, though it's never been definitively linked to her disappearance. One prevailing idea is that Melanie encountered someone she knew and that her disappearance was the result of a tragic miscalculation of trust. Others suggest that she may have been the victim of a stranger, possibly someone passing through along the nearby Trans-Canada Highway. But with no hard evidence, these theories remain speculative. Melanie's case also coincided with known predators in the region, leading some to wonder if she may have crossed paths with one. Additionally, whispers of a potential accident, perhaps involving an impaired driver who hit her body in panic, continue to linger, although no evidence has emerged to support this theory. Each possibility has been pursued, yet each has led investigators to frustrating dead ends. The disappearance of Melanie Ethier remains one of Ontario's most haunted unsolved cases. Recently, the OPP pursued a tip, leading them to search Laroque Field, a densely wooded area near North Cobalt. Despite their efforts, the search offered no answers, but authorities hold out hope for a breakthrough. Today, a $50,000 reward stands for anyone with information that could bring resolution to Melanie's case. She'd be 43 years old now, and her mother, Celine, has never stopped fighting to find out what happened to her daughter. With each year, Melanie's memory endures, kept alive by the hope that one day, someone will come forward with the truth. Nestled along the shores of Georgian Bay, Midland, Ontario is a small picturesque town known for its lakeside charm and close-knit community. But on Halloween night in 1998, the town was rocked by a mystery that would haunt its residents for decades. Jake Just, an 18-year-old known for his adventurous spirit and friendly demeanor, vanished without a trace, leaving his family searching for answers in a case that remained shrouded in mystery. Jake Just was a well-liked young man with a magnetic personality. Known for his warmth, loyalty, and natural curiosity, Jake was a Midland teenager through and through. Standing 6 foot 2 inches tall and weighing 170 pounds, he was athletic and confident, with an adventurous streak that made him popular among friends. His mother, Debbie, remembers him as caring, spirited, with big plans for college and a bright future. Jake had also practiced karate since childhood, giving him a reputation as someone who could hold his own. On October 30th, 1998, Jake attended a Halloween party with friends in Midland's Sunnyside neighborhood. The night was filled with the usual antics, and by all accounts, Jake was in high spirits, maybe, perhaps enjoying the night a little too much. Witnesses recall that he broke a bottle over his head during the festivities, sustaining a minor injury but brushing it off as he continued to enjoy the evening. Around midnight, Jake and a friend decided it was time to leave. They started walking home together, but upon reaching a wooded shortcut, Jake, intoxicated and still feeling bold, opted to take the path alone, planning to meet his friend on the other side. But Jake never arrived. As the hours passed, his mother, Debbie, grew increasingly worried. By morning, it was clear that something was terribly wrong. Friends and family quickly mobilized, and a missing persons report was filed. The local police, and later the Ontario Provincial Police, OPP, launched an exhaustive search, combing through the woods Jake had entered. Over 8 days, volunteers, family members, and friends scoured the area. Police brought in helicopters with thermal imaging, search dogs, and divers to explore nearby marshes, but not a single trace of Jake or his belongings surfaced, not even the black knapsack he'd been carrying that night. The complete lack of evidence left investigators and family alike wondering if Jake had ever made it through those woods at all. Additionally, the investigation turned up conflicting accounts from partygoers. Some witnesses mentioned that Jake may have had a heated exchange before leaving, fueling suspicions of foul play. Others speculated that he might have been followed or chased into the woods, But with no evidence of a struggle and no conclusive leads, every theory raised only more questions. Over the years, multiple theories about Jake's disappearance have emerged. One of the most prevalent is that Jake, disoriented from his head injury and alcohol, may have lost his way in the woods and stumbled into a swamp or marsh. However, the extensive searches turned up no evidence to support this, leaving many to question whether something more sinister might have happened. Other theories suggest that Jake might have encountered someone with ill intentions. Some believe he was followed by someone from the party who held a grudge, or that he crossed paths with a stranger that night. Despite the rumors, no physical evidence or witnesses have ever confirmed these theories. Jake's mother has also explored tips from psychics, who suggested everything from an accidental death to hidden foul play, but of course, none of these claims led to any meaningful breakthroughs. Today, the disappearance of Jake Just remains one of Ontario's most puzzling unsolved cases. The OPP, committed to finding the truth, continue to keep the file open. The $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest or conviction still stands, with authorities urging anyone who might know something to come forward. For Debbie, the pain of not knowing what happened to her son endures. Each Halloween, the anniversary of his disappearance, serves as a somber reminder to the community and his family. Midland still remembers Jake, holding out hope that someday a piece of the puzzle will emerge, finally shedding some light on the truth behind his disappearance. Canada's vast landscapes are full of stories that seem almost swallowed by their surroundings. Cases like these, where lives ended or vanished in ways that continue to defy understanding. In towns, remote wildernesses, and city streets, the echoes of these unsolved cases remain, affecting families, friends, and entire communities who are still searching for answers. With time, some mysteries unravel, but others hold fast to their secrets, reminding us of the silent shadows that linger in even the most familiar places. Will new evidence, advancing technology, or witnesses' memories finally unlock these cases, or will they remain mysteries, haunting Canada's landscapes for decades to come?